Welcome to another episode of Otherworldly Encounters with Mike and Brian. How you doing, bud?
Doing good, man. I had a great weekend this weekend. Went and did some canoeing with friends, camped out in the Mohican River area. And there's something about being outside. And of course, I was watching the skies. You know, you never know what you're going to see if you're camping in the woods, right? I didn't see anything, but still had a great weekend minus a couple rain spurts. How about you? How you doing?
Dude, I had an amazing week. I was out in Colorado, went to Red Rock, watched a band named Guster, who I wasn't really a fan of prior to going out, but there was just something about watching that band in that setting.
Yeah.
With an orchestra with them.
Yeah.
And it just...
Denver in the background.
Gives me cold chills just thinking about it. You know, I mean, it was
hard to beat.
Just such an epic venue.
Yeah.
So to all our listeners out there, if you're ever in Colorado,
100%. You like music, go check out Red Rock.
Yeah. Regardless of what the band is, just go to Red Rock.
It's also open to the public during the day without concerts, right?
I believe so.
Like you can go out and hike it.
Yeah. And one of the main reasons, I mean, when I was out there, obviously I was looking for UAPs, UFOs, because they just had a sighting with some employees out there that saw some UAP, UFO. So I did my due diligence. I mean, we wouldn't be good podcasters talking about aliens and stuff. We didn't. But I did bring back the shirt. Did you ever think I would ever wear a shirt like this?
No, probably not prior to, I don't know, what are we on? Episode 12? Probably not prior to 12 weeks ago.
All right. So to our listeners, I'm wearing a shirt that has Bigfoot on it, giving a peace sign with an alien with a peace sign that has some
UFOs, mountains in the background,
and it glows in the dark. So I mean, you know,
why wouldn't it
spruce it up a bit?
Yeah,
call me Joe Dirt.
I like it.
Yeah. So here we are. So now I'm wearing that. So we should talk about our new social media stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So to our listeners, we are now on Instagram. It's Otherworldly_Encounter without the S. So you can find us on there. We post daily questions. We're going to start posting maybe some short videos and some pictures and stuff with our podcast tonight. There may be a video, and we'll post it there. We're also on YouTube. So you can get on YouTube. It's Otherworldly Encounters on YouTube. We post our episodes there, which eventually we will start posting some vlogs, I guess, are what they're called. I don't know. We're old. We're boomers. So videos and podcasts at the same time. I think that's what they call vlogs.
Okay.
I don't know. Is that right?
Yeah. And then we still want people to reach out via our email, right, Mike?
Yeah. So Otherworldly Encounters 2024, so 2024 at gmail.com. You can reach out, ask questions, send in your personal stories. Also, if you listen to us on, say, Spotify or any of the other podcasting platforms, there is a link in the bio of the episode that you can click on. It comes up on your phone as kind of like a text message format, but it's an email. It goes directly to us, and we can respond from there.
Yeah. Give us some suggestions for things you'd like to hear us talk about or things you're interested in that you'd like to hear discussed more.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And so before we start, I just want to throw this out to, so over the last, about 2 weeks ago, I had my aunt passed away. So I just want to give a shout out to my Uncle Doug. He was actually the one who recommended that we have someone of faith on to do a podcast. So I just wanted to let him know that I'm thinking about him, and condolences, and to all of our family that's out there listening. If you need anything, reach out. So you ready to kick this chicken and talk about what we're getting ready to?
Yeah, let's go. We recently had his brother on to talk about his encounter.
Oh, shit, they're brothers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
what a weird family.
I love it. That must be why I'm friends with them all. I don't know. Maybe that explains something. But we got his brother on tonight, Mitch. And Mitch and I have been friends since, freshman year of high school, I think? That sound right?
Somewhere around.
Yeah, something like that. But Mitch's dad's really into some of this stuff, and we've talked about it. But Mitch, you've always been a fan of kind of that cryptid genre, so the kind of the monsters of local legend. And
exactly,
you're coming on tonight to give us a rundown of some of that. But before you do, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been into the supernatural for as long as I can remember. As you mentioned, my dad was always big into UFOs. And we'd go on camping trips, and he'd tell these stories, Bigfoot or whatnot, and that always kind of intrigued me. So I can remember even in elementary school, when we go into the school library, I'm picking up books for Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and that kind of thing. So always been a passion of mine. I think, kind of going into teenage years, I got really into X-Files, which I'm sure a lot of people have. Yeah. But I always liked in X-Files the oddball stories, the monsters that you never heard of. So that's kind of what intrigued me into just like trying to figure out things that most people have never heard of, which is kind of what I wanted to focus on today.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's like, I think you and I both like it because it's those aspects of like mystery and exploration and kind of meets in that middle of psychological, cultural, and social happenings, I guess. So
sure.
I dig it. I think it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I think, which is interesting. When we first obviously started talking about podcasts, the alien thing to me was so far out in left field. But now if you wanted to talk Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, something like that, I would have been, yeah, let's have a full conversation about it. Because those are, I think, to me was at the time before we started on podcasts, was very intriguing. Like that's you always hear about Bigfoot, you always hear about some other things, and you're just like, oh, is that shit really true? And
I like Mitch. Mitch sent us the list of what cryptids he wanted to talk about, and it'd be easy to talk about, kind of the big ones, the Bigfoot or
Loch Ness.
Loch Ness. I'm blanking on
some of the more famous.
Yeah, I was just going to say Mothman. Yeah, but yeah, you've got a list of some ones that I wasn't familiar with, so I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to the penguins.
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah, when he sent the list, that was just like stood out to me. Like, what was it? Space penguins? Yeah. Like, who wouldn't want to?
That piques your interest pretty quickly.
It's an interesting story. So before we get into any of this, though, Mike, we gotta.
Yeah, absolutely.
We gotta kick things off the right way.
Yeah, I mean, Mitch, you've listened to our podcast, so you know what we're getting ready to do here. So we're getting ready to kick this chicken, and so we need to decide what everybody's weapons of choice is. Yeah. So, Mitch, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, I'm going for a very well-known Ohio garage beer, Busch Light. But I am drinking it out of a glass just to kind of class it up,
Okay. Keep it classy.
I really thought you were going to just stay at garage beer because Mike and I both have in our hands garage beers, and that was just going to be a weird twist of fates. But
right. Well, I am in my garage, so
yeah.
I mean, not that we're trying to get a sponsorship with garage beer or anything.
Hashtag garage beer.
Hashtag garage beer for sure. Like bold that big bold hashtag.
Right.
All right. Well, yeah. So we're Brian and I are going with our trusty garage beer. To our listeners, obviously, you know how much we like it. So here we go.
All right, Mitch. Nice. I've got first on my list, and we can go in whatever order you want to go in. But I've got the list that you sent us, kind of written out for myself, and
we might as well just stick with that.
Okay. And the first one on the list I have here is the Flatwoods Monster of West Virginia.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what we're talking about.
The story took place in 1952, Braxton County, West Virginia. So 3 boys were outside at night, witnessed a bright light in the sky that I'm going to say landed. I don't know if that's exactly what happened or not, but landed on a nearby farm. So the boys ran inside. They told their mother. They grabbed a couple adults, and they went out to investigate. So they're walking up this small hill. At the top of the hill, they just see this like just glowing, pulsing red light. And as they get over the top of it, suddenly there's this really heavy mist. And this mist has this just pungent, nauseous smell that's burning their eyes and their nostrils and so forth. So then they see a creature. Now, this is what makes the story really interesting, is the description of the creature. They're describing it as 7 to 10 foot tall, green eyes. The color of its face is blood red, and the head is shaped like the ace of spades. It's got claw-like hands that kind of resemble like a praying mantis. And it's, I'm going to call like, you know how like back in like, I'll say like the 1700s, like women's dresses like were all puffed out right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're describing something like that, and it's all black, no legs, and one of them shines a flashlight at it. The creature sees them, hisses incredibly loudly, and then starts gliding towards them. So apparently this thing is floating. Okay. So obviously they got freaked out and they ran away. So apparently they called a local sheriff. I don't know what the time frame is before the sheriff got out there, but the sheriff claims that he saw and smelled nothing. And the next day, they kind of went back out there, and they're describing it as some kind of gummy deposit that's all over the ground, is the only kind of evidence that there was something there. So that night, there was actually sightings, like strange lights in the skies all over surrounding counties. I think even as far as like Washington, D.C. So something had to happen that night. Whether this creature actually landed there or not, who really knows? But I found that really interesting, especially the description of the creature. You've never heard anything quite like that.
So was this only reported by one person? I mean, other than like, okay, so this farm, these two kids on this farm, but has it been reported anywhere by anyone else other than this one specific family?
Not the creature, no.
Okay.
The creature's never been seen since then. However, they must take it somewhat serious because they've had a annual festival and actually have a museum for it too.
You gotta love festivals.
Now that could just be a moneymaker too. But,
I had read online with this one when I was researching it because I didn't know anything about it. The what people suggest that the kids saw is a meteor flying overhead at night, and then they saw an owl in a barn. Yeah. And when they shined their light, it lit up the owl's eyes, and the owls took off.
Right.
And the description is similar to an owl, but the size difference, 7 to 10 feet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the talk about the mist and the thing floating, it just doesn't kind of add up to an owl.
Yeah.
I'll say.
So Mitch, you mentioned that there was a smell. Did they say how did they describe the smell? Was it like a sulfur, like that raw egg?
They didn't really describe it in that way. It was just not nauseating. Some of the group members claimed that they got sick from it later that night. But they didn't go into details about what exactly it smelled like.
The aromas are always interesting, right? Like you talk about Bigfoot, and it's like this real kind of gross, musty, wet hair smell.
Right.
And then like Virginia, Brazil, the UFO landing when these girls saw these beings, they described them as having this just like a nauseating sulfur smell coming off of them. So it's interesting with all these creatures, there's usually some kind of olfactory evidence that people spot before they see the thing or something. So that's an interesting little point to all of these, it seems like.
I mean, I guess with me, with this one, to me, this is just like a local legend. This is just I mean, I don't even think this, I don't know. To me, this is just like a local legend of, it would be like two dudes that went out and grabbed a couple beers and they're driving down the road and all of a sudden they saw something. You know what I mean? I think it's cool that they have a festival about it. Because,
hell yeah, bring the beer trucks in.
Why not have a festival? And what better reason?
Bring in some cash.
Yeah, than this. But if only one person or one group of people have seen this, I think it's just tough. I think it's just kind of like one of those fireside stories.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I would agree with you, Mike. And I think that's why, stories of the Bigfoot, Loch Ness, Mothman, that they're more popular, right? Because there's more than one sighting. There's several hundreds of sightings.
Yeah.
So, does it give more credibility, more sightings, or people just looking for more attention? I can't answer it.
It's definitely an intriguing story. And if any of our listeners have ever come across this creature that we're discussing right now, then by all means, write in, send us your stuff. And I mean, the only way we're going to be able to take it out of local lore is to have more people that have actually witnessed it and talked about it. But no, I find it very intriguing though. I think it's interesting.
I wonder. Oh, go ahead, Mitch.
No, I was just going to say what you mentioned, Brian, about the owl. This was some kind of investigation that they did in the year 2000. So you're talking nearly 50 years afterwards.
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of evidence they're really, basing anything off of other than, well, it could have been this, so.
Yeah. You made an interesting point, so Bigfoot, Loch Ness, all those, there are so many stories. And, to your point, does that give more credence to them, or are they just more popularized so people think that they're seeing them because they've read about them? So like probably not very many people have heard about the Flatwoods monster. So if it starts getting more media attention, will we see more Flatwoods sightings? That's the question.
Yeah. Well, and that is a good question because, I know what the Mothman supposedly looks like, right? So if I'm going to make up a story about the Mothman, well, I'm going to describe it as I've already heard it.
Right. Right. Kind of preconceived notion.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, that was interesting. So now what else we got on our list here to talk about?
Well, next on the list, we've got the Pope Lick monster from Kentucky. And I know, Mitch, you and I have talked about this a couple of times because you were pretty interested in this case.
Yeah. So it's outside Louisville, and the Pope Lick monster, otherwise known as the Goatman, described as half goat, half man creature, living beneath a railroad trestle. So this trestle is enormous. I mean, it's like 770 foot long, and I think at its like peak, it's like 90 foot high.
That's big.
So the exact origins, like when the stories really started and whatnot, is really kind of unknown. But it became very popular like in the late 80s. And what's interesting too is since 1988, there actually have been 5 recorded deaths on this trestle, and death determined by either hit by a train or they fell off the trestle. So the story goes, well, there's a few different stories. So possibly the Goatman was a circus freak that is vowing revenge on being mistreated for years. There's another story that
hold on. Can we just stop? Can we just stop for a second?
Yeah.
So if I'm a mistreated circus act and I'm half man, half goat, and I live under a bridge, are you just hammering beers every day? Is that what you're doing? That's life.
I mean, I think that's how you survive, right?
Okay.
I would say maybe drugs, but maybe that the drugs is what led him to be under the bridge.
Half man, half goat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
There's another story that a farmer was reincarnated into this creature because he sacrificed goats for satanic powers. But
all right, here we go.
so what I guess what the Goatman's doing is he's somehow luring teenagers, particularly, or just people in general, I guess, but onto the tracks, and then either convincing them telepathically or whatever to stay on the tracks until a train comes or jump to their death.
And Mitch, wasn't this the one, I think I remember before from when you and I have talked about this in the past, was this the one where the Goatman is supposed to be able to mimic a voice? So you would think it's somebody and they're drawing you out there?
Yes, that is part of the legend. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And I thought this one was interesting too. When I was looking this up, and this made me laugh. In my line of work, I've run into a couple railroads, and they're notoriously difficult to work with just because they're on a schedule and things have to happen when they have to happen. In Norfolk Southern, who owns this trestle bridge that the Goatman lives under, was pissed because all these people kept getting in severe incidents, blocking the tracks, creating an incident. And obviously Norfolk Southern feels bad for who's ever dying off the trestle bridge, but then there are all these other things that they're having to deal with. And they're like, stop telling people that this Goatman lives under the bridge. People are going out there and getting killed.
And exactly. And actually, the railroad has said they will prosecute, anybody found on that bridge and blah, 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 trying to get people to stay off of it.
Right.
Now, what I wonder is whether or not this story was created to scare people from getting on the bridge. Because in the small town that I grew up in, there is a small trestle. I would say maybe it's 100 foot long and I don't know, maybe 25 foot at best off the water there. But me and one buddy, we crossed it one night, and I will tell you, it was terrifying because even at 100 feet, so if you're in the middle and a train comes, well, 50 feet doesn't seem that bad, but when you're walking across these boards and everything, I mean, anything could happen.
Right.
So perhaps the story was intended to, like keep people from actually getting on it, when in fact, then they got intrigued, and then now people are trying to go after this monster. So
Mitch,
might have backfired on them.
Maybe I missed it. Did they give a description of this Goatman other than it just half goat, half man? Was there any other like descriptors?
Like what it physically looked like, you mean?
Yeah.
So I think it had like legs of a goat, and then it wasn't like a complete man on the top end. It had like horns. Obviously, like with these types of stories, the descriptions vary quite a bit.
Right, but wouldn't that be what is that, a minotaur? Like the half man, half
it'd be similar.
goat?
There was like a Greek, I forget what they were called, but it was kind of a half man, half goat kind of thing.
So
but it looked more satanic, I guess I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Description. It's a very evil goat.
Which, honestly, I mean, if you want to start getting into the paranormal stuff with this, there absolutely probably could be some demonic entity that looks like that could be potentially luring people out there to their deaths. I think that's could potentially be something with this, but I also wonder, being it's like such a high place, right? It's some 90 feet off the ground. Mm-hmm. Those who have passed tragically from that area, was there any type of mental health issues going on as well, right? Like, do we rule out if it was a suicide, right? Or, you know what I mean? Like, high places attract certain things. Mm-hmm. And that's where, like, then maybe did this story come out to prevent people from going out there?
That makes sense, because it wouldn't have existed prior to the train tracks, I would assume. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
So, I mean, although a very intriguing story, I think I'm putting this into the old folklore, like the hometown local legend.
Part of me wants to believe that there's a Goatman hybrid hammering beers under train trusses somewhere in West.
Yeah, he's called the devil,
or Kentucky rather.
He's called the devil.
Just waiting for a teenager to come by.
yeah. Part of me wants that to be real.
I mean, after our last two podcasts, we call that the devil, unless. Yeah, no, there's no unless. We call that the devil.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are other states that claim that they have a goat man and it wields an axe and blah, blah, blah. So
now, do they have a festival about this one?
Ooh.
No, they don't.
Damn it.
And I think it goes back to they're trying to avoid people from going there. And,
right.
Makes sense.
Not encourage tourism.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hey kids, let's go. I'm going to take this tour on this bridge. It's a railroad track. It's active.
And I haven't seen any pictures. Supposedly they put up some kind of fence, like an 8-foot fence, to try to keep people out. But I'm like, well, the railroad's still active, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
How can you have a fence around it?
So I guess if we have any listeners this was based out of Kentucky, right?
Yep.
Send us any information you have on this one. I'd like to know if there's any like further, like, you know how it goes. It's kind of like the telephone game. I tell you what happened, and then you tell your friend what happened, and time it gets to like the last person, it's
totally different.
So many different stories of what actually transpired. So I guess I'm just interested to know if there's any more variations of this specific one.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. A little side note too, and this doesn't really have to do anything with paranormal, but if a teenager happened to be up on there, I mean, you're talking 700 feet. I don't know how long that took you to get off the tracks, but supposedly the tracks are extremely narrow, and the average train would take 5 to 7 minutes to pass by. So if you're dangling off the side of a bridge, that's a long time to be hanging there.
That really is.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about that. You're trying to hold your body weight while the bridge is vibrating.
There's no way. You're done.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that could potentially do it, but I'm pretty sure. I agree with you. I think it's
an Olympic athlete, sure,
maybe, or rock climber, maybe like a professional rock climber.
Yeah,
but I don't think everyday Joe like you and I are done.
No, we're dead.
We're
100% dead.
We drink our last garage beer. We're going to the bottom.
We're going to have to jump off and have beers with the goat guy if we make it.
Yeah, just hope that river's deep.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, space penguins. Let's get to this. I just want to get to this.
You just want to talk about the space penguins.
Well, you know what? Mike's excited about it. I am. So, Mitch, out of all the list you sent me, there were two that I read, and I was like, you know what? Okay, there may be something here. The rest of these, I think, are just kind of fun tales. But this is one of the ones that's kind of interesting because it's your classic UFO encounter from somebody that had nothing to gain from it. Mike, you and I have talked about the biggest piece with Travis Walton was the contract, and the day when it was up is just happenstance that he's abducted. We talked about Bob Lazar. Did Bob get kickbacks? Well, Bob's made a movie, so there's some money in it. This is just a nobody farmer in Missouri that has this weird encounter. So, Mitch, get into it.
You know, and to that point, whenever a farmer has a story like this, it always kind of captures my ear a little bit because growing up in a small town in Ohio surrounded by farms, all the farmers that I know would never come forward with anything like this. I mean, it absolutely wouldn't. I mean, they would value their credibility.
Yeah,
you know,
take it to the grave.
So you
take
know
it to the grave.
That what you just talked about, and not to cut you off, and I farm. I help a buddy of mine out on a farm, so I agree 100% with what you just said there.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes me back
and
to
this story actually, well, I mean, we'll get into it here in a minute, but in the end, he did at some point in time come forward to a UFO investigator, told him his story, but did not want it revealed, at least his name, until his death. And the investigator followed through with that. So,
but what this takes me back to is, have you both seen The Field of Dreams?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My number one movie on my list of all-time favorites. But when he goes to pick up some seed or fertilizer or whatever, and he was asking the other farmers, so have you ever seen anything? And they're like, and just looking at him weird. And as soon as he said, hey, like I heard something, and then the other farmer just announced, hey, you know, Roy's hearing things or whatever, right? So
right.
Exact to what Mitch just said. I totally get what I feel that because it's like, it's definitely like that Field of Dreams skit or that scene where, you know, he's trying to explain like, hey man, I'm out in my field and
this guy's going loony.
He's going loony.
He's going a little loony.
Yeah.
So this story takes place in Missouri, 1967. So the farmer at the time was 64 years old. He was just kind of out and about doing his own thing, walked past his barn, and he noticed all of his cows were facing in the same direction. So obviously that's going to capture your attention. Like, what the heck's all this about? So he walks up, and he described it as the first thing he saw was a massive metallic mushroom. So he walks a little closer, and he starts seeing little tiny creatures running around it. And as it gets closer and closer, he describes them as 3 foot tall, greenish gray in color. He couldn't tell if they had hands or their arms were just moving so quickly he couldn't define a shape. So then he also mentioned that they were either wearing goggles or just had large black eyes. He couldn't really tell. And it kind of looked like they had some kind of black apparatus, like a breathing apparatus kind of thing around where their mouth should be.
To me, it's sorry not to cut you off, but if you think like a gray alien, right? What if it's just a bunch of gray kids?
Well, yeah. So he described the ship is like 18 foot in diameter and 8 foot tall. That's not big. That's not huge, you know? So these things had to have been pretty tiny.
Or
so to that point,
I've heard a lot here recently. Ever since 2017, there's so much more information coming out. And this is one of those complete hearsay. I don't even believe it, but I think it's interesting. Apparently, they've got a couple UFOs where it's kind of this same size, but then you go inside and the inside's like as big as a football field. So there's some kind of like dimensional happening. So,
well, there's some other things that depict that too. But how cool would that be though if you could have like just like a 1x1 cube, but you step in, and next thing you know, it's like a football field.
I would be 100% a hoarder. Do you know much like just silly bullshit I would buy and stuff in corners? I wouldn't even know what's in there.
Oh, and I don't really appreciate you two dismissing my question or my thought on that, because I do believe these could be great kids, and you guys are just ignored it.
Yeah.
No, that's what I was.
So now I want my listeners out there to chime in, because I'm sure there's someone out there that agrees with me that these are just little great kids that was just out, just
they're on a field trip
exploring. They could have been on a field trip.
But Mitch, wasn't it something about the reason they're called space penguins is they had some kind of like really weird gait to their walk, right? Wasn't that part of this?
I mean, it was basically like a waddle. And then the fact that he couldn't tell if they had hands or their arms were just moving, so it kind of resembled like a fin of a penguin, I guess.
God,
Are they called fins?
How cool would it be to have some alien penguins?
Right.
Like,
So
I
you
would
can
take
set
alien
little-
penguins any day and showing up in my backyard than some like gray or whatever
penguins.
other.
Do you feel like they'd prefer to come in winter or summer?
But
They're penguins.
That is a great
Well,
question.
this took place in the winter, so I guess this. There you go.
Makes sense. Like a cold.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, you got to make a good point. Like, what does this guy have to gain to report something like this? Like, nothing.
As the story continues, you'll just love the farmer approach. It's great. So he gets closer and closer, and what's he do? He's pissed off that they're trespassing on his land and scaring his cows. Isn't that your typical farmer? He doesn't care that they're from outer space and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They're trespassing on his land.
Yeah, and he doesn't want them to fuck up his crops.
So does he
Right.
go
Totally
towards
get it.
the craft?
Yes. According to him, he got within 20 feet of it before he, quote unquote, ran into a wall, an invisible wall.
Kind of like a force field.
Yep.
Wow.
So then he picked up a rock and threw it at it, and it hit the force field. He picked up another rock. He threw it higher and then claims that it skipped in the air like it would on water.
Huh.
So it must have hit like the top of the force field and then it bounced off.
So this craft basically had a defense mechanism around it while the space penguins were out and about.
Exactly.
Intriguing,
For this-
actually.
Well, we're sitting here
That's
looking at
fascinating.
Mike. You and I are looking at the picture that Bob Lazar drew of his sport model craft, and Bob said that gravity field came out around the UFO, and that like photos would always be blurry because it bends light and does all this stuff. I suppose if you could control how big of a circle you could make, you could expand that out and like make a force field. Because I think even Bob said you basically have a force field. It's like being on Star Trek.
Yeah, and in Bob's, what he describes as kind of like a heart shaped right around whatever. So if you threw it up higher, and if you think of the heart, you threw it up higher, I could see where it would skip
Yeah.
skip
Or even
off.
it's just a bubble, I guess.
Yeah,
Huh.
either one.
Interesting.
I
So how
think
far does the force field go on the Bob Lazar, according to him?
Well, I'm just looking at the photo, and this is a complete guess. And I don't know. I don't know that Bob ever did much. He worked on propulsion, and I'm not sure how he even knew what the force field shape is. But I think Bob's craft was like 40 feet long. So looking at the photo, the force field's very tight on the sides, but then really big on kind of the bottom and top of your kind of quintessential UFO shape. So it's probably like 3x kind of on the y-axis, that vertical axis, and then almost no distance on the x-axis on the sides.
Yeah, I find that part very intriguing. So he was the only one to report this, right? There's been no other farmers, no other reports or encounters.
So again, he went to, and I don't know how long after, went to some UFO investigator to tell him the story, and then he wanted to stay anonymous until his death. So,
Has he died yet?
he was 64 back in
1967.
67.
All right. So where the hell's the shit?
Yeah.
Where do we find it at?
Right.
What did he say he did, Mitch? So he throws rocks at this. Do the
Yeah,
beans
apparently,
react?
The space penguins, or the great kids, whichever we want to call them, started skirting around a lot, and then they got into their ship and took off.
So did he say it did it like a door opener, or they were just able to walk right past?
That's interesting. So he was describing like not really a window, but there was certain like areas that were open around the bottom of the ship, and like different lights, and it was almost like he said like a rotating light of different colors. And where they entered, he couldn't see. It was supposedly on the other side of the ship.
It sounds very much like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? Like just huge glowing, blinking lights and all this business.
True. But this took place before that movie came out.
And plus, this dude's only worried about his crops and his animals. He doesn't watch much TV.
No. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I like the Space Penguins.
I give some credence to it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. To me, this isn't. To me, this wouldn't be like anything like a hometown story. Like I think this dude actually might have seen something.
I don't know. I put it right there with Travis Walton. Now, I don't believe Travis Walton because of the financial piece. But again, what makes this interesting is there is no financial incentive for telling anybody about it. So why? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I would put it. You're right. I guess I can see where you're going with the Travis Walton, because there's not any type of evidence that would actually
no one else saw this.
Corroborate whether this happened or not. Yep. And we're literally basing it off of one guy's interaction. But I think that it's plausible. I'm gonna throw out the plausible word on this one, because I think this one is. I think there's some merit behind it.
Plausible. I like that.
Sure.
All right. Next on the list, we have the Werewolves of Michigan.
Oh, Jesus. Do we have? Are we cutting out the M when we talk about it, like Michigan?
Right.
I can't believe you just said
so
the
that
word.
meant to be Wisconsin, actually.
Oh,
perfect.
My
Thank
bad.
God.
Okay. Whoops. I was like, wow, we really don't have to go far to explore this one. Maybe field trip this. Okay.
Well, Wisconsin's not that far away.
Okay.
So, I mean, werewolf sightings have been all over the world, right? So I picked Wisconsin because not everybody is like aware that supposedly Wisconsin's a hotspot for werewolves. The first recorded sighting of a werewolf was in 1936. A man supposedly witnessed a humanoid wolf-like creature digging in a graveyard. He got out of his car kind of to get a closer look. He had a flashlight or a lantern. I don't think they have flashlights in 30s. Anyway, kind of spooked the creature. And then he was a little bit curious, and he went back the following night, saw it again. So there wasn't too much to that story, but whatever. That's the first recorded.
Well, before you move on here, hold on a second. So so he saw this werewolf in the same cemetery 2 nights in a row, right?
Yes.
And so was it digging in the same spot both nights?
That's an interesting question. Okay. What I read, it didn't actually describe it, but it would be interesting if he was digging the same site.
Yeah, because then my next question would be like, what do you think he was digging for?
What, yeah,
right?
who is it? Right. Whose grave is that?
Could have it, is this, could the werewolf been digging for a family member or something? I don't know.
Maybe he bit somebody and they were going to turn, but it looked like they died, so he's digging it up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities.
Interesting.
Too many beers.
Yep.
Moving on.
So 1936. So what do we got next, Mitch?
So good.
So a reporter named Linda Godfrey started, and I guess things were a little bit slow, so she started picking up some of these stories of werewolves in the 90s, and she started accumulating, like she couldn't believe actually how many stories there were, so she started digging deeper and deeper. It wasn't until 99 that really sparked the most famous one, which is the Beast of Bray Road.
Oh yeah, there's a movie on this, right?
There's a doc. Well, yeah,
I think I watched it.
The Beast of what?
Beast of Bray Road.
Bray Road.
Bray Road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's 3 counties. I don't remember all the counties, but Jefferson. I want to say Jefferson County, and anyways, there's 3 that are just west of Milwaukee that seem to be like the biggest hotspots and sightings for werewolves, which is kind of like really strange. Because, Milwaukee's not that far from Chicago either. So it's like, this just doesn't fit, right? Like, why are all these werewolves here? Well, there's 2 thoughts. Either it's all bullshit or, if the stories are true that they turn into humans and so forth, then I guess they're not really hiding, right? It's not like Bigfoot where they're they're constantly having to live in isolation, so there could be something to this. Now, what's also interesting is werewolves really date back into German folklore. I'm not sure how far back it goes. I think hundreds, if not 1,000 years. And Milwaukee, or not Milwaukee, but Wisconsin in general has been known to have a lot of German communities. So a lot of German immigrants settled there. So did the curse of werewolves follow them to the United States, or just the stories? Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because is this a cultural, thing where, most German families who immigrated over, they had that when they lived in Germany, and they've always grew up with this story, and they brought it over, and now we have, werewolves of Wisconsin.
Well, the U.S. is the melting pot, right? So you get all the different cultures coming in. That's an interesting point to all these, Mitch, like all the different cultures that are here, living in the United States coming together with whatever their historic tales are, kind of creates the framework.
It just makes sense that they would continue that folklore.
Especially because the first couple we talked about was right around like Appalachia, right? Like Appalachia, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, they've there's small knit communities down through the mountains there. So
that Linda Godfrey still has a blog too that she keeps up to date today. So if you're ever interested, look up all those stories.
So how many sightings has she reported? Like, so she has this blogs. Okay.
Yeah, hundreds. And I don't know what makes this one so famous. I mean, most of the sightings occur like somebody's driving and the creature like goes across the road or in the woods or something of that nature. There's not like a huge encounter. This one kind of stuck out, I guess, because there was a little bit more to it. Supposedly an 18-year-old in 1999 was driving, and then of all nights, it's Halloween.
Go figure.
So she hits an animal. She doesn't know what she hit. She pulls over, gets out, and she claims that it's a werewolf. And this werewolf starts running at her. She gets back in her car. The creature jumps on top of her car and it's punching, scratching, and doing all kind of things. And she takes off, and eventually the werewolf fell off. So now that's just one woman's claim. So why did it attach? Why did it get so much publicity? I don't really know.
Did she actually have the car that showed the damage from the werewolf?
I think there was just a couple little dents or scratches. It wasn't anything significant.
All right, so I'm gonna call BS on that. Now, granted, and I'm not saying not what you just said, Mitch, but I'm talking about the chick's story.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
If werewolves are anything like we see on TV, right? They're very powerful. I don't see a car having just a few nicks and dents or scratches. I mean, if the werewolf jumped up on a vehicle, I just see it like, I mean, they're dents, big dents just from the feet. Like, if he's punching it, you're gonna have busted glass. You know what I mean? Like, there's gonna be more damage than just.
Absolutely.
I think she was probably just out, hit something, and she's blaming it on a werewolf.
Werewolf.
Probably hammered because she's out by Milwaukee driving on Halloween. They probably went to a party. She had one too many spooky punches, left the party.
Doesn't want to get in trouble with parents, and comes up.
Smoked something that hobbled off the road and was like, it was a werewolf.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a werewolf.
Was it a full moon? Was that part of the story?
But
that was not included.
Yeah, but the part of that I do find fascinating about this is that there has been multiple reports. And so if there's been multiple reports, I would be curious to know where those reports, if we, put an old plot map up, right, of different locations, how close are they?
Geographically, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To each other.
And like I mentioned earlier, the 3 counties that are all adjacent to one another. So
I might have to check out Linda Godfrey's whatever you said. Mentioned it's like an Instagram page or something.
She's got a blog.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's on Instagram, but just kind of get on the website.
A blog that's so 1990s.
I like it.
All right, so where you putting this one at?
Well,
in your
start
bucket.
The blog till later. I mean, she was. But anyways, yeah. So
I'm going to say that this is a no-go for me.
No go.
No go on the werewolves. I don't feel it's there. Now, hold on. We missed an important question. Is there a werewolf festival in Wisconsin?
Oh yeah.
So
Please, if there is, we're going.
There is not.
Damn
and they claim it's rural, a lot of farmers, blah blah blah. They don't want people showing up. So
that just makes me feel
no festival.
That just kind of makes
That's a bummer. Yeah, I'm out on this one. Mike, you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's again a great local legend. I think it's something to scare kids to say, "Hey, nothing good happens after 11 o'clock." So get inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I don't think unless there's someone out there that has photos, videos of something, to me it's a local legend.
Yep, I'm with you.
And that's a good point, Mike. Too. It's sort of like remember the story of the two couple that are on the lovers' lane with the guy in the hook and everything else. I mean,
classic.
Clearly, that was kind of made up to discourage like premarital sex, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was a classic until they made a movie about it, and then became real. They made a movie about that one, right? I don't remember.
It kind of did.
For love me, I don't remember what the name of it, but it had that same flavor to it.
I Know What You Did Last Summer or something like that.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I think maybe that's what I'm thinking about. It's close to it, but you're absolutely correct.
But I can see, parents making up stories of werewolves and things like that, just to your point, to try to get them in at night. So,
I mean, shit, when I went to camp, I think it was my middle school year, there was the lure of the green giggy, right? And it was, I don't know if both are from Ohio, so have you ever heard it?
No,
I think that was just, again, it was one of those camp things that like, hey, like after dark, there's the green giggy running around. And supposedly it was like a human who got into something like probably, I'm trying to remember, this is, several years ago, but it was something along the lines of some type of like radioactive, whatever, right? Where the fuck you don't find that in Ohio, right? I don't know.
Well, we do have a couple nuclear.
We do actually. I just rethought that. Yeah. All right. So scratch that. There could be potentially, but where this was at, nowhere close.
Right.
And so then, now he's glows green, and then at night, so you go there and there would be like the green giggy. And then like the last day when you had like your big to do,
your
like,
camp celebration.
Yeah. Like they were telling the story about, and then there'd be knocks, and then, scare people. But then if you actually looked where they're knocking, like they try to get in the window, there'd be like green goo and shit. Right. So, I mean, again, it's one of those things that I think this falls under. It's just a local lure for some reason.
That one sounds like something that some camp counselors were like, what can we do to keep these kids inside? I stole a 12-pack of beer from my parents' fridge. We could sit in like the main cabin and drink this if we could get the kids to stay in.
No, absolutely.
Let's tell them about the radioactive monster.
But I will tell you, when you're, I think I don't know how old I was. I've been in middle school. How old are you in middle school? 15, 16, 18?
No, that's high school.
Well, you went to the wrong school then. You must have been in a better school system than I was. Right. So what are you, like 12?
Fifth to eighth grade was middle school, or no, sorry, six, 7, and 8 were.
So like what, 12, 13?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, 12, 13-year-old kids, out in the middle of nowhere, staying in cabins with people you've never stayed with, You're
impressionable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's still bullshit, but, it was cool at the time. All right. What we got next?
So this next one, I said there were two that I thought were really interesting.
Hold on a second. I guess there's one question we haven't really asked Mitch.
Oh.
So out of all these stories so far that you've told us, like, what are your thoughts? Do you believe these, or do you think they're credible?
Honestly, it's kind of like I'm in it for the story. I find it fascinating. I find it exciting. I find it interesting. But the stories that we've talked about so far, no, not really.
All right, that's fair. I was curious.
They're just cool stories.
Yeah, they're cool stories so far.
Now, I would love to have a camping trip up in Wisconsin, just for the hell of it. But do I expect to see a werewolf? No, I don't.
So I guess it comes down to, Brian, would we rather see a werewolf in person or an alien in person?
Oh, alien, 100%.
I want to see the space penguins in person
Yeah.
over like
Yeah.
a gray.
Okay.
Okay.
If I was going to
Space
put them in
penguins.
order, the space penguins are definitely number
Heck
one.
yeah.
Space kids.
I mean, I guess,
Space
you know,
kids.
if I was going to believe one story that we've talked about, the Space Penguins does have some kind of credibility in my mind.
So going off of that, Mitch, there were two of these that I thought, well, these at least sound like they could be plausible, right? And this was the other one. And this is the one where you've got, you sent me the link to the YouTube video, which we'll throw up. But yeah, give us the background on the Monterey, Mexico witch.
So before we start there, this video will throw up on our Instagram.
So the early 2000s, around Monterey, people were claiming to see a humanoid figure either flying through the air or up on building rooftops. And it was in 2004, a police officer was on patrol at night. He claims that a dark figure flew straight out from the sky directly in front of his car. He slams on the brakes and it stops before it hits the road. And in his headlights, he could see that it was what he said it was a woman. And suddenly it flew at his car, starts aggressively scratching at the windshield, and then gets up on top of his car, starts shaking it. He gets on his radio. He's calling for backup. And then I guess he got so scared he passed out. Okay. So then the story goes is other officers showed up. They saw nothing other than him passed out in the car. They took him to a hospital. They ran some tests, and then because he's a police officer and he's telling this crazy story, they kind of gave him a little bit of a psych evaluation, testing for drugs and all that stuff. So everything came back clean. So, and the guy still claims to this day that that's exactly what happened.
Well, I can see where the drugs test. I mean, if you think if anybody's ever supervised anyone, right, and you have grounds to do like an alcohol or drug test, probable cause there. Well, you got somebody who's claiming something, right? Especially at that scale.
A witch.
You definitely have reasonable suspicion to like, all right, well, I think Officer John here needs to have his urine tested and blood work done and all this stuff.
Yep.
But what to me though with this, if he's putting it out over the radio, which is recorded, so all that audio is recorded somewhere.
Well, we're talking 2000
and
what'd you say? Oh, this was 2004.
Oh, it's definitely recorded.
Did they have body cams in 2004?
Not body cams that I know of, but the audio from their mic
that has to
recorded.
get turned on when he turns the lights on, right?
No. If you pick up your mic and you start talking into it, all that is recorded. It's recorded back in dispatch. Now, whether or not they've actually kept all that is, to be, whatever. But
Interesting.
But any radio traffic is recorded.
Does that exist, Mitch? Do you know?
I've not come across it.
Okay.
So that'd be something to our listeners. Do you have this audio recording of this police officer calling in this suspicious thing?
So all these sightings sparked a lot of paranormal groups to kind of go down to Monterey and try to find something. So the video that I sent you came from 2006. Now, the interesting thing about it is there are two videos, and they're of the same thing. Now, I don't know if it's two people in the same paranormal group or if it's two different groups, but regardless, you're seeing the same thing from two different angles. So, in my opinion, that does give it a little bit more credibility.
Right.
Well, the fact that there's an actual video of it.
And it is interesting. I think we called out, and we'll post the link for it. But I think when we were talking before we started this, Mitch, about the video specifically, I think it was like at 13 seconds, you kind of see this UAP, I would call it. They're calling it a witch. I would say it's some unidentified aerial phenomena. But anyway, it's between the two kind of crest points of mountains. And it really does look like, I think we were talking outside. It looks like a witch from Hocus Pocus riding the vacuum cleaner or something, right?
Absolutely.
Like
it literally
the knees
does.
bent. And,
right.
But the other interesting thing about it is just recently, and I'll have to look this up and find this, but there was someone took a video of a UAP, and it's almost like a teardrop shape, and it kind of looks similar to what they filmed. But what's interesting is you've got the police officer story of the witch, and then paranormal groups looking for it, but then the corroborating video. Now the video, you can kind of see the outline, but you can't see details.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember when I first saw it, I thought it was like the Iraqi jellyfish.
Yeah,
video,
that is
right.
what we said.
And now, granted, the videos are from two different angles. The military video is from above, looking kind of down. This video is from the ground, looking up, and different technology, obviously, right? So just the features itself made me think of the jellyfish.
Yeah,
but I can also see if somebody was like actually witnessing it in person, would be like, holy fuck, there's a witch right there.
Yeah.
I can see that too.
Are there more first like up close encounters with the witch up there, Mitch, or like?
No, those are the only two videos that I've actually ever seen. That's really kind of all I know about it, other than just eyewitness statements. But and to that point, I don't think it was 2006 when I first saw this video, but it was a long time ago. And when I first watched it, somebody said witch, and I guess that's kind of where my brain went, right? So when I'm watching this thing, I'm seeing a witch on basically like a broomstick. I mean, it is just like nuts to me. But you're bringing up a lot of good points. I mean, it is unclear, so it could be about anything. What's strange though is like it's just traveling in such a straight line.
Yeah, that is
which
weird.
I guess a witch would do. I mean, I don't see why a witch would just be flying around in circles, but
We're gonna have to ask Holly.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to get with Holly
Right.
and find out if witches, if they were to ride brooms, would they
fly in a straight line.
absolutely do that
Fair.
stuff? Right? So Mitch, on this one, where are you at on this? You think this one's
Ooh,
plausible? Do you think can you get behind it?
I need more evidence, I guess. But I find it intriguing anyway.
Plausible. This got to get the plausible stamp for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think if it wasn't for the video,
Yeah, which I think's a UAP and not a witch, but I kind of like the story of the witch. That's more fun.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think it's a UAP, but I can if somebody would like, hey, look at this witch, and you threw that video up there, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see where it would look like a witch.
Right.
But to me, when very first looked at it, to me it was like the Iraqi jellyfish. So I think it's plausible. I think that this one there could be some credence to this one.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Well,
Good.
next, Mitch, I've got 3 left on the list. Is there one you would prefer to talk about?
Let's see here. Okay. So the giant cockroach of California, I think it's like total bullshit. So we won't get into that one. I love the evil gnome story, but since we're kind of running out of time here, but I'll stick with the shorter one. That kind of actually ties in a little bit to our stories with Germans being in Wisconsin.
Okay.
It's the White Bluff Screamer of Tennessee.
Okay.
So this story supposedly takes place in the 1920s in Tennessee, rural Tennessee. A man built a farmhouse. He and his wife had 7 kids. And after they were living there, each night they were just hearing this just wailing, screeching noise, this screaming noise. And just, and as the days progressed and the nights progressed, it got louder, it got longer. This goes on for like 5 nights. His family is terrified. They can't sleep. And so he finally decides he's going to go out and see what's going on. So he grabs his lantern, grabs his rifle, and he starts heading towards the screaming noise. So as he's getting farther and farther from his house, suddenly the scream kind of like moves, like it's almost like behind him. So he turns around, and he's following the screaming noise, and he's getting closer and closer to his house. Well, as he approaches his house, that screaming, wailing noise turns into his family just brutally death wailing. He runs into the house to find his entire family torn to bits.
What do you mean, like dismembered?
Yes. So there is no record of a crazy murder in the 1920s in Tennessee. But what's fascinating is this very much resembles the Irish folklore of the banshee. And guess what? there was a lot of Irish settlers that settled in Tennessee. So this kind of ties back into, that a lot of these tales, whether you want to believe that the curses followed them to the United States or whether they just stories, but I found that pretty interesting. So.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting story. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say I think it's bullshit, but I think it's very interesting because it's, again, why would that story have come out? There's got to be some reason for it, right? We always ask why. And a lot of these things like folklore or urban legend, local urban legends come out for a reason, but why is that? But I mean, in 1920s, I would think, I mean, obviously there's newspapers, something, if police were called on that, especially something that horrific, like your entire family, all 7 kids plus the mom are just dismembered in a farmhouse, that would have hit the news somewhere. You're going to hear about that shit.
Yeah, exactly. It just kind of goes into folklore and how things evolve and stories and things like that. They travel throughout history. So,
well, people have mental breaks, and you always hear about it in the news, kind of tragic, and centered around mental health awareness, but like people killing their entire family, and they're like, I don't know what happened, and it's like, are we seeing that play out? But in the 20s, when there's no mental health awareness or diagnosis of different kinds of mental disorders, but to the point, there's not even a record of it happening. So yeah, I'm with you. That seems bogus, but yeah,
I would call bogus on that one too.
Yeah. I know we're over, but I really want to hear about, I really want to know what the evil gnome is.
Yeah.
Just because it's evil.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a 2-part story. But, so this took place in rural California. I don't have a year, but a woman, she's living with a couple of kids. She's feels like she's been watched, like the whole time that she's lived there. She goes out grocery shopping. She comes back. She's unloading her groceries from the car, and just hears this god awful evil laugh. And she kind of is looking around. She's not seeing anything. This evil laugh kind of keeps moving around, and then suddenly, bam! There's what she described as a 2 to 3 foot tall, bearded creature wearing a gold shirt and a red pointed hat. I mean, it's your classic gnome, right? I mean,
that is the classic description of a gnome.
And it's got this grin just ear to ear. And so she supposedly drops her groceries, grabs her son, and runs inside. And then after being inside, she can hear this thing tapping on windows and doors. And I think one of the things I loved about this story was one of the windows, she could just see the top of that pointed red hat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she said the rest of the time that she lived there, she never saw that creature again, but from time to time she would hear that evil chuckle from coming from the barn. What's
the 2-part?
The 2-part kind of goes back to it's a Welsh and Cornish, which I'm not really familiar with Cornish, but immigrants that came to the United States, they're called knockers, or some of them called Tommy knockers, which is kind of strange because there was a Stephen King novel, Tommy Knockers, but it has like really nothing to do with this. So, but the story goes from Europe that miners would hear these knocking noises, and there were gnome or dwarf-like creatures that would like torment miners. They would sometimes it was innocent enough as like they're just stealing their food or their tools or something, but they also blame them for things like cave-ins and whatnot. So California was known that even actually up until like the 1950s, these miners actually believed that these things existed. So there was a story, and I don't have a state where it was from, but in the 1950s, one of the larger mines closed down, and there was 6 different entrances, and they sealed them all up. And people in the surrounding area petitioned that they open up one of those entrances because they wanted the Tommyknockers to be able to get out. And for whatever reason, the owner actually complied and did it.
Did they have any issues once they did that? Or any more reported or anything like that?
No, nothing else was reported since then. But, kind of like they kind of tie together as like, are the Tommyknockers the evil gnomes? And, what are they doing? Who knows?
Who let the gnomes out?
I guess I could look at this in a couple different ways. You could look at it if you're a miner, and hats off to those men and women who do that, because that's not this guy. But holy shit, you're burrowing X amount of feet underground, right? And there's only one way in, one way out, and you really can only rely on the man and woman to your right and left at that point. If there's a cave in or whatever, or you're hearing noises. So I can kind of see this as being some type of just, local lure of
sure.
Hey, if you hear this, they're giving us, a heads up that there might be a cave in, right? If certain sounds, but they're
right.
Instead of it just saying, hey, like, this is what it sounds like if there's about to be a cave in, they give it some type of a name, or say it's some type of a creature. Now, granted, if their lunches and parts of the lunch and stuff are getting stolen, I don't know of any animals that would be that far down, but I don't know, man. I think there's shit in the middle of Earth that we don't want to let out. Yeah. So stop digging so far down.
Right. Now, one of the explanations, and it kind of goes right with what you're saying, Mike, there is, they used to use a lot of like wooden supports, while they're digging. And you would hear that kind of creaking and cracking, almost a knocking kind of noise and kind of things like that. So, when you're underground, your mind can just wander like crazy. So obviously you're going to kind of like start blaming it's some kind of creature down there. So
for sure. And if this was back, and you said the what years were this?
Well, this started in Europe back in, who knows, but it started in the U.S. in the 1800s and was actually still strongly believed up until the 1950s.
So if you think about there, then you gotta start asking yourself, well, let's talk about ventilation, carbon monoxide, whatever, people are down there, they're obviously going to work.
Lack of oxygen.
Yeah. Was there any other cause to them? Maybe they were hallucinating at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they're hearing it. So I think I'm not going to say this one's bullshit, because I think that there are legit stories from miners that
evil gnomes.
I don't want to say they're evil gnomes, but I just think that the things that they're hearing, it may not be a gnome, but I think that what they're hearing or whatever is got some validity to it.
Sure.
I don't believe this one at all. This feels like the kind of, I guess, similar to the Flatwoods monster, or I'm sorry, not the Flatwoods, the Popelick monster. It sounds like stories that are created to keep people kind of aware, conscious, either away from an area, or in this case, like if you hear wood cracking or whatever, like it's not evil gnomes, but you can call them evil gnomes. Just get the hell out of there.
Right.
Just get the hell out of there.
Yeah,
right?
no, exactly. I don't disagree with you, Brian, at all. I think I just think that there are things that you hear when you're underground that have meaning behind it, and that's potentially where this came about.
Right.
Now, do I believe that there's little gnomes running around beneath the surface of the earth? No. Unless somebody has a video, and then maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't know what to even think. I don't even want to say it's plausible. I don't want to say it's bullshit, because again, the gnome part I think is bullshit. The reason they may have the gnomes, I think there's some credibility to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm with you for sure.
Yeah. They're not wearing red pointy hats.
Right. right. And grinning at you and laughing all the time.
Laughing all the time. Now, this giant cockroach story is actually amusing. It's kind of funny. I don't know.
All right. Well, lay it on us. We've come this far. Let's hear
at
it.
this point.
Oh, okay. So there's no exact date on it. It just said late 90s. A woman was traveling from Los Angeles to Vegas. She stops at like some random small motel, probably out in the middle of the desert is kind of what I'm envisioning. So after she's gotten settled in, there's a knock on her motel door. So she opens it. She supposedly has the chain, latched on there. So she opens the door. She can't see anything at first, but there's a male voice that asks for bed linens. Okay, so then she starts kind of peeking around and trying to see who says this, and she sees a 6.5 foot tall cockroach. Okay. So then this creature.
I'm sorry for laughing, but like I have this fucking vision of Men in Black. Right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Like popping in my mind right now. All right, I'm sorry, Mitch.
No, you're fine. So then this creature spat some kind of like brown substance at her. She screams. The creature asks why. Now this makes no sense. But anyways, she doesn't respond to the question, and then this doesn't make any sense either. She decides instead of just closing the door. The best option is to run out the door past the creature. Okay?
Why didn't you just get him the bed sheets?
Right?
just give him the bed sheets.
Dude needs some linens.
So you'll love this,
what?
Brian, because I think you're kind of a Chuck Norris fan.
Oh yeah.
So she's running down the hall. The creature catches up to her, grabs her dress, and she remembers some Chuck Norris movie where he did this move. So she
Can this
drops
story
to
get
the
any
ground,
better? This story cannot get any better.
Kicks the leg out from underneath the creature.
All right.
A leg sweep. Kick
Dude,
the leg, man.
I am glad we saved this for last because this is, I mean, once you insert Chuck Norris into any fucking story, it becomes epic.
This isn't. Well, she might have seen it in Chuck Norris, but the original is who's the kid that gets the karate training where the original sweep the leg came from?
Oh, Karate Kid.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
what was it?
Sweep the leg. The movie Karate Kid, where where the bad guy Johnny Lawrence, his sensei is like, you got to sweep the leg. Yeah, so this lady swept the leg of a 6 foot tall cockroach that just wanted some bed linens.
So then she runs out of the motel. There happens to be some guy that's standing outside at some payphone. Sees the creature, calls the police, somehow up within minutes. And I'm like, this has got to be in the middle of the desert, right? So I don't know how the police show up that fast. But anyways, chases and that scares the creature off. So when I was reading this story, the first thing that kind of popped in my mind was the movie Mimic. You remember that?
I do not. No.
Okay. It was released in 1997. And it was some creature that could, it resembled a man-sized cockroach, and it could kind of shapeshift a little bit. So I'm thinking, okay, she's on her way to Vegas, right? She starts the party early. The movie Mimic is on television. She's whacked out of her mind and hallucinates the whole damn time. So,
yeah, I wasn't too far off from you, Mitch, on where my thought was here. I was thinking this is just an epic Saturday night.
Yeah. Shout out Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, because that sounds like a scene from that movie.
Yeah, or this to your point, Mitch, she was on shrooms, acid, something that she was just having a bad trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly.
As funny as the story is, I mean, to her, obviously this was horrific, but goddamn, you're throwing in some Looney Tunes shit in there.
I love it.
Think about this. You just leg swept a fucking 6'2" cockroach. That's Looney Tunes shit.
I love it. And Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris inspired you for that sweeping leg kick.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Man, I am glad we're ending on this one. That one was, that's, okay. BS. I'm just going to throw it out there, right? Straight bullshit is what I'm calling on that one.
I think the two we landed on that were plausible were Space Penguins and the Monterey, Mexico Witch.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
again, we'll post a link, or we'll just post the
To
video,
the video.
on our Instagram page. But yeah, I mean, the space penguins. If we can find any more, I don't know. Obviously, there's not going to be any video. There's not going to be any other evidence. Maybe if there's a story, we'll post that.
Okay.
Yeah, Mitch,
There
if
you go.
you have something on it, like, just send us a link, and we'll just
Sure.
post that onto our Instagram page there for all the other listeners to
Check it out.
check it out. Yeah, and then they can call us out and think we're bullshit.
Second 13 is where you get the best image in that video. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, 13 seconds in. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Cool. Well, Mitch, appreciate you joining the podcast
Well, hold
today.
on a second.
Hey, I had
We haven't got his
great
take here.
time.
Hold on,
I
Mitch.
loved it.
Hold on a second. What's your thoughts on the last thing we just talked about here with the old cockroach?
No cockroach. As much as I hate to say it, I'm gonna have to call bullshit.
If you did not, I would be like, all right, what's this dude smoking? Like, we got to get into this a little bit further, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I just, man, I think it's
came
funny as
across
shit.
that
I think it's a
story.
great story, but I think it's just a story.
Right. Yep. I agree.
But yeah, to Brian's point, Mitch, we really appreciate you coming on here tonight. This one was a lot of fun.
I had a blast, man. I'd love to come back sometime.
Oh,
Cool.
for sure.
Happy to have you.
Yeah, and to
I'll have more stories for you.
yeah,
All right.
and to our listeners, if you have any of these stories or experiences yourself, please write in. Let us know. You can send us an email at Otherworldly Encounters 2024@gmail.com. You can get us on Instagram, which is otherworldly_encounter. And then we're also on YouTube under our podcast name. So please send us videos, send us your remarks, comments, negative or positive. We're big boys.
Take them all.
We're big boys. We can handle it.
Yep.
So, and we are pretty responsive when it comes to those who make posts. And then on our YouTube channel, also in the community tab, I post some questions there as well. So, but yeah, Mitch, again, thank you for being on here tonight. This one was probably one of the funnest episodes. We're just
Great.
I just
fun stories,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Mystery and exploration. That's what it's all about.
There you go.
Yeah. And I just thought it was cool shit. So
Well, until the next time we're around, keep your mind open, your eyes on the sky. You never know what's going to fly by.
and with that, we'll catch you on the next one.